She had always been afraid of mirrors. Not of her own reflection. No, she was indifferent to that, as if it belonged to someone else. She was afraid of their cold, soulless ability to multiply reality, to create false perspectives, offering a glimpse of the world from over her shoulder. This fear was especially strong on the days when her mother, Vera, began her annual, almost ritualistic preparations. Nastia was 27. She lived in an old but well-kept Moscow apartment, where every object breathed history and a kind of obsessive, almost museum-like cleanliness. And every object seemed to be the keeper of a single, enormous secret, like a marble slab. A secret that Vera guarded with the ferocity of a wounded lioness. Her mother was a monolith of a woman. A perfectly straight back, impeccable posture, as if carved from marble, and a gaze that did not ask for respect, but demanded it. People said that Vera was a true aristocrat from a bygone era, her speech honed like steel, her manners an impenetrable fortress. But Nastia knew that behind this fortress lay fear. Deep, ancient like the house itself. Once a year, in mid-October, Vera would take an antique chest covered in purple velvet from the depths of the closet. It was not just a chest, it was a sarcophagus, a crypt for unspoken words. And what lay inside was the heart of her fear, a stigma that Nastia carried without understanding its nature. Inside lay a wedding dress. Classic, ivory-colored, with long sleeves and delicate lace that seemed to be woven from frozen moonlight. It was old, but absolutely new. There was not a single stain or trace of wear on it, only a subtle, barely perceptible scent of lavender and loneliness. Nastia remembered this ritual from her childhood. Her mother would lock herself in her room, take out the dress, spread it out on the perfectly made bed, and sit next to it for hours, not touching it, just looking at it. Sometimes Nastia heard her mother crying quietly, almost silently. But as soon as she entered, the tears instantly disappeared, as if they had never been there, and Vera's face once again turned into a mask of indifference. Nastia got used to it. Her life was as smooth as a sleeping person's cardiogram. No strong passions, no major conflicts. And this ideal predictability suited Vera. Everything changed on that October day. Nastia was getting ready for work. She was an editor at a small publishing house, a woman of words, but not a woman of action. Nastia, wait. Her mother's voice was muffled, unusually tremulous. She stood at the half-open bedroom door, holding a small, dull silver frame in her hand. Nastia stopped in the hallway, her heart doing a nervous somersault. For the first time in so many years, her mother had broken the sacred rule of isolation during the ritual. I need you to look at something. Vera took a step, and Nastia saw something on her face that she had never seen before. Not fear, not pain, but pure, undiluted animal panic. Nastia approached. On the bed, under the bright light of the chandelier, lay a dress. And next to it, like a prop, lay that very silver frame. Inside was a photograph, old, black and white, with uneven edges. It was of a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with that special, slightly haughty beauty that breaks hearts. And she was wearing that very dress. The woman in the photo was smiling, widely, happily, her eyes shining in a way that Nastia had never seen her mother's eyes shine in any of the memories she had. Who is this? Nastia felt something inside her grow cold. Vera ran her finger over the woman's face in the photo. Her voice was strange when she spoke, low, creaky, like crumbling sand. This is my twin sister. Your Aunt Anna. Nastia took a step back. Sister? Twin? There had never been anyone else in her family but the two of them. Vera had always said she was an only child. But why did you never mention her? Where is she? Vera's eyes closed for a second, then opened, filled with the same panic. She turned slowly, almost hypnotically, toward Nastia. Anna. Anna is dead, Nastia. She died on her wedding night, in this dress. And Vera looked up at the huge, full-length mirror standing in the corner. I was always afraid that you would see her in the mirror instead of yourself. It was like a blow to the gut. Nastia's whole life, built on the foundation of her mother's calmness, cracked. Where was the groom? What happened that night? Vera flinched. Her hand fell. The groom's name was Maxim. He was a good guy. And what happened? Vera's voice became as hard as ice. What happened? You must find out not from me. You must remember. Nastia looked at her mother, feeling surreal. She was born 5 years after this tragedy. I don't remember anything, Mom. How can I remember something I didn't see? Vera sighed heavily. She took a silver key out of her pocket and opened a small, hidden compartment in the chest. From there, she took out an old leather diary. You don't remember the events, Nastia. You remember the feelings. Anna wasn't just my sister. She was my reflection, my punishment, and my only love. And that night, Vera placed the diary in her daughter's hands. That night, something happened that tore our family apart. Something that made you afraid of mirrors since childhood. This is Maxim's diary. Read it. Then you'll understand why I can't just tell you the truth. It's too close. It's too personal. Because until today, you weren't like Anna. You were me. You were my protection. But now you look at her, and it's a stigma. The stigma of a wedding dress. It's on you, Nastia, and you need to know what it means. Nastia went to her room. It seemed to her that the apartment had shrunk and the walls were closing in on her. She opened the diary. The handwriting was large, confident, masculine. The first entries were dated May, 5 months before the wedding. May 14th. My Anna. She is a storm trapped in porcelain skin. She doesn't ask, she demands. She doesn't request, she takes. And I love her for that, for her wild, untamed energy. We set the date, October 28th. She said the lace should look like frozen frost. We ordered it from Italy. Vera, her sister, seems to hate me. But it doesn't matter. Only Anna matters. June 3rd. Vera. Her eyes. They're always watching. They don't look at me. They look through me, as if searching for a flaw, proof of my unworthiness. Anna laughs at this. She says that Vera is a perfect but lifeless copy, and she, Anna, is the original. But I feel sorry for Vera. She tries so hard to be perfect that she forgets to be alive. Nastia felt a twinge of pain. She had always believed that she had inherited this lifeless copy from her mother. Perfect order, perfect politeness, perfect predictability. Armor. August 1st. I don't understand what's going on. Anna has started to change. There's a emptiness in her. It's as if part of her soul has flown away. She started to forget little things. Our favorite places, phrases. I asked her if everything was okay. She laughed, but it was a harsh laugh like the crack of glass. I'm just tired of this perfect world, Maxim. Of this constant comparison. Of the fact that even when I'm happy, she, Vera, he meant Vera, looks at me as if I'm doing something wrong. Nastia put the diary down. A conflict between two women, two opposites. And in the middle was Maxim, who loved the storm. She got up and went to the mirror. She looked at herself for a long time. Her hair was dark, like her mother's. Her eyes were gray, like her mother's. Her features were soft, undefined. A copy. I've always been afraid of mirrors, Nastia whispered. But why? Her mother said she was afraid of seeing Anna in her. But why was Nastia afraid of seeing Anna in herself? With this thought, she returned to her diary. September 15th. We had a fight. Loud, scary. Anna said I was too predictable. That my love was a golden cage. She said she needed space. I shouted that she didn't appreciate what we had. She grabbed the vase Vera had given her and smashed it against the wall. And at that moment, I saw a strange fire in her eyes. A fire that had nothing to do with me. When I left, Vera was standing in the hallway. Her face was pale. She didn't say a word, but her eyes, they said, I told you so. She's not for you. It was a tangle of jealousy, oppression, and wild passion that tightened around 3 lives. And Vera played the role of a silent judge in it. There were only a few weeks left before the wedding. Nastia turned the page. October 25th. 3 days. 3 days before the wedding. Anna disappeared. She doesn't answer her phone. She's not at home. Vera is going crazy, but in a strange way. She's not crying. She walks around the house, packing Anna's things into boxes and saying she always did that. She ran away from herself. But this time she'll run away forever. I don't understand her. How can you talk about your sister like that? I called the police, but Vera told me not to dare, that it would disgrace their family. I asked her why she was so calm, and she said, "Here." Maxim's handwriting changed dramatically. Dash. She said that Anna simply did not want this wedding, and that she knew it would be this way, and that she had been telling Anna for a long time not to disgrace me. That Anna should have left me, and that if Anna did not return, Vera, she would take her place. To save the family's reputation, Nastia couldn't breathe. Her mother had offered to take the place of her missing sister-in-law, to save face, or to save Maxim, or to save herself from the loss of her sister, even at the cost of an even more terrible lie. She flipped through a few more pages. They were blank. And then an entry from October 28th, the wedding day. October 28th, morning. She came back. She just walked into the house. Pale, exhausted, but wearing that same dress. Vera was crying. She hugged her and shouted, you're back, I knew it." Anna pushed her away. "Don't, Vera. It's not because of you." She turned to me. Her eyes were full of tears and fire. "I love you, Maxim, but I can't. I can't be a copy. I can't be what people expect me to be." She said she had married someone else, that she had gone away for a week with another man, and that, here, the handwriting broke again, dash, and that she didn't care anymore. She said she was marrying me only to stay in this house, close to Vera, and that it wasn't love. It was revenge. Revenge. A battle for life, for the right to be original. Last entry. Night. October 28th. Midnight. The wedding. Everyone left. Just the three of us. Anna, Vera, and me. I asked Anna, "Why are you doing this to me? Why did you marry me, knowing you love someone else?" She replied, "I don't love either of you, Maxim. I love her. I only love her, and I want her to be mine. And you're just in a way." She pointed at Vera. Vera was standing in the corner with her head down. She looked broken, and Anna smiled. It was the most terrifying smile I've ever seen. "Either you leave, Maxim, and I'll be with her, or I'll make sure you never have anyone." I walked over to Vera. "What does that mean?" Vera raised her head. Her face was contorted. She looked at me and said, "She's not lying, Maxim. We love each other. Always. And you were our screen, our cover." Nastia threw the diary away as if it were a hot coal. Homosexual relationships. Two twin sisters bound by forbidden love. One was a storm, the other a copy. They loved each other, and Maxim, the groom, was just a tool to hide their relationship, to make it seem legit to society. The wedding night. Three people in one room, bound by forbidden love and lies. Nastia felt dizzy from the realization of the scale of the drama that had unfolded here, within these walls, 27 years ago. I don't remember what happened next. I only remember a scream. Vera's scream. And water. Lots of water. And her eyes. Anna's eyes. They were open. They looked at me with such hatred, such mockery, that I couldn't help her. I ran away, and they stayed. And when I came back, only Vera was there, all wet. She was sitting on the floor next to the bathtub. The bathtub was full, and Anna, she was in it, in her wedding dress. And Vera said she was always afraid of water. And I couldn't save her. The last sentence. Nastia felt the world around her spin. She was always afraid of water, but here was the opposite. Anna was afraid of water, but she died in it. Maxim ran away. Vera was there. Nastia slowly, with trembling hands, took the diary and turned to the very last, empty page. On it, in pencil, in careless, childish handwriting, were written just two words. I saw, and at that moment, in that silence, Nastia remembered. Not an event, a feeling. She wasn't born 5 years later. She was a baby. She was there. She was born before the wedding, out of wedlock. Anna, in order to give her sister legal status and cover up the family's shame, agreed to a fictitious marriage with Maxim, using him as a father who wasn't there. And the baby, Nastia, was in the next room, in her cradle. She couldn't see eyes. She saw a reflection. Nastia rushed into the bathroom. Her bathroom. It was exactly the same as in the old photographs kept in Vera's albums. white cast iron on lion's paws. And it was huge, this bathroom, capable of holding not only water, but an entire tragedy. She looked at the mirror and saw herself, her gray, calm eyes. She walked over to it and leaned her forehead against the cold surface. And then her gaze fell on the lower corner of the mirror. Where the frame almost touched the wall, there was a barely noticeable, old, worn chip. Nastia bent down. She leaned low, like a child, and looked into it. The chip was not on the mirror. The chip was on her memory. And then she remembered not the scene, but the sound. A splash, a scream, and then silence. And she, a baby, was crying, and nearby, in the corner, sat a wet Vera, clutching something to her chest. Nastia closed her eyes. Now she knew. Vera and Anna loved each other. Anna, wild and passionate, couldn't live within the confines of a lie. She married Maxim to blow up their perfect world, to force Vera to admit their love. That night, after Maxim ran away, Vera and Anna were left alone. Anna, standing in her wedding dress, said something that finally broke Vera. Perhaps something about taking the child, Nastia, and leaving forever. Vera, a lifeless copy, couldn't take it. She couldn't let them take her away, let her only reason for living, her child, leave with a storm. Anna had always been afraid of water. It was her only irrational fear, which Vera had known since childhood. And Vera used it. She didn't kill her, no, but she pushed her, or made her, in a fit of despair, jealousy, and fear of losing everything. And the baby, Nastia, lay in her cradle. She didn't see the murder. She saw the reflection in the mirror, the reflection of the struggle, the reflection of the fall. And then, Vera's face, distorted with grief and horror. That's why Vera was afraid of mirrors, because the baby, Nastia, saw the truth in them. Not Vera's face, but the reflection of what Vera had done. And so Vera, in order to protect herself and her child, in order to glue reality back together, made Nastia like her. Perfect, calm, predictable. And she instilled in her a fear of mirrors so that she would never look for that very chip, that very reflection, that very truth. Nastia slowly came out of the bathroom. She went to her mother's room. Vera was sitting on the bed, her hands clasped, waiting, in her wedding dress. Nastia approached her, not with anger, with understanding. "Mom, I remember," she said quietly. Vera did not flinch. Her eyes were full of tears, but this time they were real, genuine tears. "You saw it, Nastia. You saw the reflection when you were very little. You cried every time I brought you to the mirror. You cried because your memory was clearer than my conscience." Nastia nodded. Anna didn't get married just to save your honor. She got married because she loved you, Vera, and she wanted you to stop hiding. She got married to make you choose her. But you chose yourself, and peace, and me. Vera raised her hands, covering her face. "I was afraid of water, Nastia. Not for myself, for you, so that you wouldn't repeat it. I thought that if I made you different, not like her, then you would be safe. In this purity, in this lie." Nastia knelt down next to her mother. "My life is not a copy, Mom. It's your fear. Fear that I will be free, like Anna. Fear that I will love just as much. Fear that I will drown in my passion. And you made me dispassionate. You made me sterile." She laid her mother's head on her knees. "I won't tell the police, Mom. This is our secret, our shared burden. And I'm not carrying it for Anna. I'm carrying it for you. Because you're my mother. And because your pain, your lies, they made me who I am." Vera hugged her. For the first time in 27 years, it was not a formal embrace, but an embrace of two broken but connected souls. Nastia felt how many years of lies and pain were coming out of her mother in this trembling, desperate touch. "Now that you know, what are you going to do, Nastia?" Vera whispered. Nastia looked at the wedding dress. It no longer seemed like a stigma. It seemed like a challenge. "I will stop being afraid of mirrors, Mom. I will look into them, and I will search for Anna within myself, the part that was a storm, because only then will I be able to start living. Not your life, my own." She stood up slowly, with dignity, and went to her room. She took a hammer. She returned to the bathroom. She looked at the chip in the corner of the mirror. Then she raised the hammer and struck the center with force. The mirror cracked, shattering into hundreds of pieces. It could no longer multiply reality. It could no longer create false perspectives. It could no longer reflect lies. At that moment, standing among the shards, Nastia felt not fear, but freedom. Freedom from someone else's sin, from someone else's jealousy, from someone else's deadly fear. She was not Vera. She was not Anna. She was Nastia, and her life, only now, at the age of 27, was beginning. With a clean slate, with a broken mirror, Nastia left the bathroom, leaving behind a sparkling scattering of the past. Vera was still sitting on the bed. Nastia walked over to the chest. She picked up the wedding dress. The fabric was cold and heavy. "What are you doing?" Vera's voice was frightened. "I'm putting it back, Mom." Nastia folded the dress neatly. "But now it's not a sarcophagus. It's just old clothes. And the secret will remain with us, but it will no longer control us." She closed the lid of the chest and turned the key. The click of the lid was the final chord in this drama. Nastia went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. She suddenly felt like having tea. Hot, strong, serene. She looked out the window. It was a bright autumn morning, full of gold. The world outside the window went on as usual. No one knew that in this old Moscow apartment, one lie had just died and one truth had been born. When the kettle boiled, Nastia took 2 cups. "Mom, the tea is ready," she said. And for the first time in 27 years, she didn't wait for an answer. She just lived. 3 months passed. 3 months in which Nastia learned to walk. Literally. Every morning, she woke up in the same room, but the walls no longer weighed on her. They were just walls. Her relationship with Vera became paradoxical. They hardly spoke, but understood each other more deeply than in all the previous years. A heavy but liberating silence hung between them, in which words were unnecessary. Vera stopped insisting on perfect order, although she herself continued to live by her strict rules. Nastia, in turn, did not demand the impossible from her mother, repentance or apologies. She knew that Vera had paid dearly, living a quarter of a century in the cold prison of lies. The most radical change was in her work. Nastia, an editor who had always been a woman of words, not deeds, suddenly realized that her sterile life in publishing was a direct consequence of her mother's fear. She sat at her desk, proofreading other people's perfectly polished texts, and felt something wild breaking inside her. "I will look for Anna in myself." The part that was a storm. She started small, with her workplace. One day she came in and, instead of arranging her pencils by color as usual, she knocked over a glass of coffee onto a pile of perfectly calibrated manuscripts. Her colleagues gasped. Nastia looked at the spreading brown stain at this act of chaos, and for the first time in a long time, she felt not horror, but a strange, intoxicating excitement. "I am sorry. I just wanted to," she said, her voice echoing Anna's. A week later, she quit. Without thinking it over, without finding a new job, she simply wrote a letter of resignation. Vera didn't even ask why. She just baked Nastia's favorite pie, as she had once baked it, perhaps for Anna, when she was causing another scandal. Left without a job, Nastia began to search not for a new place, but for herself. She didn't go to libraries or museums. She went to the banks of the Moskva River. She stood on the embankment, looking at the heavy, flowing water, and tried to understand Anna's irrational fear. Water. Death. One cloudy day, Nastia signed up for diving lessons. It was madness. She had never even liked taking a bath with her head under the water, remembering that ancient, infantile fear encoded in her psyche. The instructor, a stocky, tan man named Igor, looked at her pale, tense face and asked dryly, "Why are you here? You're afraid of water." "I need to know why," Nastia replied. It was her new mantra. The first classes were torture. She was suffocating even in the pool, in shallow water. The airtight mask, the cold water, the silence below the surface. All of this echoed in her with that same infantile cry she had heard through the mirror reflection. In the second week, during an emergency ascent training session, She panicked. She ripped off her mask, swallowed water, and was pulled out, shaking and blue. Igor, the instructor, approached her after that. He didn't yell. He spoke quietly but firmly. You have trauma, Nastia, and it's not a fear of water. It's a fear of control. You're afraid of losing control because you think that losing control means death. The death you saw. His words became a new key, a new flash of insight. Yes, her mother, Vera, had tried to control reality her whole life in order to survive. To control her, Nastia's life. And Anna, the storm, hated this control. Her whole life was a protest against it. Nastia returned to her classes. Now she wasn't fighting the water. She was learning to surrender to it. She was learning to trust the mask, the tank, her body, the instructor. She was learning what Vera had never taught her, to let go. And one day, in the third week, she dove down. Deep, 12 meters. When she reached the bottom of the pool, there was absolute silence. Only her own breathing, loud and rhythmic. And in that silence, for the first time in 27 years, Nastia felt peace. The water that had taken Anna now gave Nastia freedom. It was boundless, cold, and unpredictable. The complete opposite of Vera's perfect order. And there were no mirrors in it. Her storm was born not in screams, like Anna's, but in silence and depth. With diving came a new life, new acquaintances. Nastia became a different person. Her eyes became deeper and her smile wider. The elusive, almost museum-like numbness with which she had lived disappeared. It was at the diving club that she met Oleg. He was 10 years older than her, the owner of a small IT company, a man with a light, ironic gaze and a very quiet but strong manner. He was an experienced diver and often helped Igor with beginners. Oleg didn't try to win her over. He just watched her. He saw how she tensed up before each dive and how she relaxed afterwards. You're looking for something there, he said once after they got out of the water. Nastia didn't lie. She couldn't. The lie had burned up along with the broken mirror. I'm looking for my sister. And myself. My sister, who was killed by my mother's fear, and myself, who was killed by my mother's fear of repeating my sister's fate. Oleg was neither surprised nor frightened. So you're looking for a place where you can breathe, even when there's no air. I understand. Their romance began underwater, amid air bubbles and silence. It was simple, tender, and very sincere. For the first time, Nastia felt that she was loved not for her predictability, but for her depth and, yes, for her unpredictability. For her storm. 6 months later, Oleg proposed to her. They were standing on the roof of his house at night, above the twinkling city. I can't give you a perfect world, Nastia. I can only give you the opportunity not to be afraid of depth. And you can be afraid. I'll be there for you. Nastia agreed. It was simple without pathos, without fear. The problem was Vera. Nastia understood that she had to pass this test. She went to her mother and said, I'm getting married. His name is Oleg. He's a good man. He's a diver. Vera's face was impenetrable, but Nastia saw her fingers tremble. A diver was her only question. Her voice was thinner than usual. Yes, he taught me not to be afraid of water. Vera stood up. She slowly walked over to the chest. She didn't open it. She just ran her hand over the purple velvet. A wedding dress. You're not going to. Her voice trailed off. No, Mom, I'm not going to wear it. It no longer has power over me. It will stay here. Just like an artifact. But there's something else. Nastia approached her and took her hand. Her hand was cold as marble. Oleg doesn't know the whole story, Mom. I don't want him to know. It's our burden, our family tragedy. Maxim, he left many years ago. Anna, she's gone. And that's all the world needs to know. I forgive you, Mom. But I ask you one thing. Don't be afraid of my happiness. Don't try to control it. And come to the wedding. Please. Vera stared at her for a long time without blinking. She saw before her not Nastia, not Anna, but a completely new woman, born from the ashes of old lies. All right, Nastia, Vera whispered. I'll come. But what about the dress? Nastia smiled. I'll buy my own. White but simple. No lace that looks like frozen frost. And then Vera did something Nastia didn't expect. She opened the chest, took out the dress, and crumpled it in her hands. No, Nastya, you shouldn't buy a new one. This dress, it must be used to lift this curse, so that it ceases to be a symbol of death. Let someone else wear it. Nastya was stunned. But Mom, your Aunt Anna left it behind, and I couldn't save it. But maybe you can save its fate. Nastya, find someone who needs it, someone who isn't afraid of it, someone who isn't afraid of the storm. It was the ultimate act of forgiveness and liberation on Vera's part. She was giving her greatest fear, her fetish, to the world. Nastya took the dress. It smelled of lavender and, for the first time, hope. Nastya and Oleg got married. The wedding was quiet, without excess, but full of light. Vera sat in the front row, straight as a string, but her eyes were warm. Nastya wore a simple, flowing dress in which she felt like herself. A week after the wedding, Nastya began to fulfill her mother's request. She posted an ad, "I will give my wedding dress to a good home. It is vintage and very beautiful. Free of charge. But there is one condition. Tell me your love story." Many girls responded, but Nastya wasn't just looking for a poor bride. She was looking for a storm. She was looking for someone who wasn't afraid. And she found her. The girl's name was Kira. She was an artist, lived in an attic, and her whole life was paints, freedom, chaos. Kira and her fiancé, a musician, lived in absolute poverty, but were obsessed with each other. When Nastya brought the dress to Kira's studio, Kira gasped. This is a masterpiece. How can you give it away? It has a complicated history, said Nastya. A tragic one. It needs to find happiness. Kira laughed, her eyes burning like Anna's. Happy? I don't believe in curses, dear. It's just a piece of clothing. We'll create our own story, our own storm. Kira tried on the dress. It fit perfectly. She twirled around in it among the paint cans, to the sounds of loud, frenzied music played by her fiancé on an old piano. Looking at Kira, Nastya saw Anna, wild, beautiful, completely free. And for the first time, this beauty did not cause her fear. It made her proud. Nastya left, leaving behind the dress and the story that was going out into the world. It was her final farewell. Nastya and Oleg lived simply and happily. They traveled a lot, of course, diving. Underwater, Nastya felt at home. A year later, they found out that Nastya was pregnant. When she told Vera, Vera cried for the first time in many years, not out of grief, but out of joy. Nastya gave birth to a girl. They named her Agnia, which means fire. When Agnia was 6 months old, Nastya picked her up and walked over to the mirror. Not the broken one they had replaced, but the new, large mirror in the hallway. She looked at herself, a happy mother, and she looked at Agnia. The child's eyes were gray, like Vera's and Nastya's, but they burned with the same uncontrollable, wild fire that Anna had. The storm had returned, but now it was not destructive. It was life. Agnia smiled at her reflection. She didn't cry. She wasn't afraid. Nastya realized that the curse had been lifted, not by the dress, not by forgiveness, but by the fact that she, Nastya, had learned not to control love, not to control fear, and not to control her child. She allowed the storm to live. Life, freed from the stigma of the wedding dress, became a whole new chapter for Nastya. She realized that all her previous life experience, her pedantry, her sterility, were not weaknesses, but a defensive reaction inherited from her mother. But now that armor had been shed. Vera, her mother, had changed. She was getting older, but she hadn't faded. That obsessive, marble-like perfection had disappeared from her face. She had simply become a grandmother who doted on her granddaughter, Agnia, with endless affection. Sometimes, when Nastya caught them together, she saw Vera whispering something to the girl, and Nastya was sure there was no lie in those whispers. Perhaps Vera was telling her stories about Bura, about her sister, Anna, but now without bitterness, as a wild but beloved part of their family heritage. Nastya and Oleg bought a house outside the city by a lake. It was a fundamental decision. They wanted Agnia to grow up surrounded by water. The lake was calm, blue, and very deep. Nastya didn't just get used to water. She made it part of her profession. Together with Oleg, They opened a small club for those who use diving as therapy, for people who have experienced trauma, panic attacks, or are simply looking for a way to cope with obsessive fear, what Nastia called the fear of control. She became a psychologist without a degree, using her personal experience and the depth that truth gave her. Once, when Agnia was about 3 years old, she was standing on a wooden pier by the lake. Nastia and Oleg were preparing their diving equipment. Agnia, who was already walking well, approached the very edge and suddenly reached out her hand toward the water. She was not afraid. She looked at the water with undisguised curiosity that was almost physical, like the gaze of a predator. "Fire looks at water," Oleg said quietly, standing behind Nastia. Nastia smiled. Agnia, fire, the storm of her aunt, her grandmother, herself, now looked at water, the symbol of death and fear, and saw only play in it. "You're like your Aunt Anna." "Agnia," Nastia whispered but without alarm. "I'm not afraid of water," Agnia declared loudly, as if challenging the whole world. Nastia picked her up and hugged her tightly. "I know, sweetie, and that's good." The only thing that bothered Nastia was Maxim, Anna's fiancé, the man who ran away that night, leaving behind 2 sisters and his conscience. Nastia found him. It was difficult, but using Oleg's connections, she found out that he lived in another city, worked as an engineer, and had never been married. His life was similar to the one Nastia had led before the secret was revealed. Perfect, dispassionate, built on control and denial. Nastia decided to write him a letter, not to accuse him, to complete the cycle. "Maxim, I am Nastia, Vera's daughter. I am not writing this to stir up the past. I am writing to tell you that I know the truth. I know that you ran away, and I understand why. You couldn't stand that strange, wild passion, that storm that Anna and Vera carried within themselves. You were just a hostage. But I want you to know that your silence, your trauma, like my mother's trauma, gave birth to a new life. A life that began with the greatest fear, the fear of the truth. I learned not to be afraid of water. I learned not to be afraid of Anna within myself. And I ask you, stop being afraid. Life doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be real. I have kept the diary, but story is over. You are free. Sincerely, Nastia." She sent the letter and did not wait for a reply. It was her last gesture in this drama. She did not want to save him, as Vera had tried to save Maxim or Anna. She just wanted to close the last, empty page of the diary. A few weeks later, she received a reply. One short message to her email from an unknown address. "Thank you, Nastia. I always thought I saw her in the mirror when I looked at myself. Now I see myself, and it's scary, but it's the truth. Be happy, and may your storm be warm. M." A few years later, when Nastia and Vera were sitting on the terrace of a country house, Vera, stroking the sleeping Agnia's head, said quietly, "You know, Nastia, I lied to you about only one thing. Anna wasn't afraid of water. She loved it. She was a water sign according to her horoscope, and she always said that only in water did she feel truly free. She spent hours in the bathroom. She swam like a fish. She was a water element. And I knew that. I used her passion. I knew she would never let herself die in water. I thought that she would swim out, that she would understand my desperate jealousy, my fear of losing her, my fear for you, that she would just surface and we would laugh like we did when we were children." Nastia froze. It was the final, most cruel twist. It wasn't fear of water, but love for it that caused her death. Vera didn't try to kill her with her fear. She tried to scare her with her element, hoping that Anna, the storm, would give in and surface for both of their sakes. But Anna didn't give in. She probably preferred to stay in her element than return to Vera's lies. "You thought she would surface, Mom." But Anna never swam against the current. She was the current, Nastia replied calmly. Vera nodded. The last shadow of guilt finally faded from her face. "And you, Nastia, you are the shore that accepts both water and fire, and does not break." Nastia stood up, walked to the lake, and dipped her hand into the cold water. "I'm no longer afraid of water or fire, Mom. I'm only afraid of silence. The silence that comes when you hide the truth." She looked at her home, her daughter, her mother. She accepted her family history in its entirety, Vera's lies, and his passion, Maxim's escape. She realized that all of them, each in their own way, were just people trying to survive in a cage of social expectations and impossible love. Her trauma was healed not by forgetting, but by a complete, deep, cinematic realization that human life is not an ideal, sterile order, but a frenzied, chaotic, beautiful storm. And in this chaos, she, Nastia, finally found herself.